All right, so today we are going to take a look at using the fraction busters method to make solving equations a little bit easier. Here is our first example. If you see an equation like this, you might think, oh my gosh, I need to go find my calculator because there are decimals in here. But I'm going to show you today how we can get rid of these decimals and make this a little bit easier to solve. So as I take a look here and see, I have two decimal places, or it's going to the hundredths there and to the tenths here. Well, one thing we know about equations is that we can find equivalent equations by multiplying everything by the same number. So if I were to multiply this whole equation, every single term inside of the equation by 100, what that would do is move all of my decimal points over a couple of places. So I'm going to show here, if I'm going to multiply this whole thing by 100, if I take 100 and multiply it by this 400ths x, I end up being able to get 4x. Well, in order to keep my equation equivalent, I now have to multiply 100 times the 1, so that would be 100. But I'm also going to multiply it by this 2.2, or 2 2/10 at the end, to keep my equation equivalent. So if I multiply 100 by 2 2/10, I'm going to get 220. Well, now I don't have any fractions and I can solve, and I'm going to get to the same answer. So if I solve this equation here, first thing I would do would be to just subtract this 100 from both sides. Over here, when I combine my like terms here of 100 minus 100, that equals 0, so I'm left with 4x. And on the right side here, when I combine these like terms, 220 minus 100, I'm left with 120. So now I need to get x all by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So I'm going to get x equals 30. Now, I should check my answer, but I'm going to check it back into this original equation, because then I can just double check to make sure that my answer is correct and that I did all of the parts accurately. Whoops, there we go. So I'm going to scroll up here a little bit. So I'm now going to plug 30 in. So I have into this original equation, I'm going to plug 30 in for x, and I should get, if all goes well, I should, on the left side, I should get 2.2. So the first thing I'm going to do is multiply 30 times 400ths. So I multiplied this just as though I'm multiplying 4 times 30. So I would go 4 times the 0, and get 0. 4 times 3 here and get 12. But then I know I have two decimal points, or two decimal places. So that means I need to put my decimal point in two places from the right side. So 30 times 400ths is 1.2. And then I add the 1, and that should give me 2.2 on both sides. So you can see that even when we solve an equivalent fraction, or I'm sorry, an equivalent equation, we will get to the same result, and we can double check that into that original equation. All right, let's do one more, this one, with some fractions. All right, here's where we're going to get into fraction busters. So if we're going to bust out these fractions, then what we're essentially doing is multiplying by both of these denominators. All right, so I'm going to go through and bust out these fractions one at a time. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this whole equation by 3. Again, as we multiply every term by the same thing, it keeps the equation equivalent. All right, when I multiply 3 divided by x, or 3 over x, and that's the fraction, times 3, those 3's will eliminate. So they will cancel each other out, and so we'll be left with just x when I multiply those together. Now, when I multiply 3 times x over 5, that makes my numerator become 3x, and I still have 5 as the denominator. So I still have that fraction there, and we'll work on getting rid of that next. Last, I need to multiply 3 times 16, and 3 times 16 is 48. All right, now I still have this pesky fraction right in here, so I'm going to bust that out by multiplying everything by 5. All right, so same process. 5 times x, the first term here, will be 5x. This time when I multiply the middle term here, the numerator will stay the same because the times 5 and the divide by 5 they are opposite operations and they will cancel each other out. So I am left with just that 3x. And now I need to multiply my 5 times 48, which is going to be 240. Now I can simplify and solve this equation much easier than I could that original equation. I just need to add and combine my like terms here. 5x plus 3x is 8x. And that equals 240. To get x all by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 8. When I do that, I will have x by itself over here. 240 divided by 8 equals 30. Now I can check and put 30 back in for x into that original equation just to make sure that I did both my fraction busters as well as my solving correct. So when I plug 30 in, I'm going to have 30 divided by 3. And that will be added to 30 divided by 5. And then those two should equal 16. All right, let's solve this here. 30 divided by 3 we know is 10. And 30 divided by 5 is 6. And together, 10 plus 6 does, in fact, equal 16. So it works. That tells us that our answer to that one is x equals 30. All right, there you go. That's using fraction buster method to simplify our equations, hopefully making it easier to solve from there.